What if you woke up one peaceful Sunday morning to the sound of chaos and destruction? Would you have the courage to face the uncertainty? Picture it, December 7, 1941. A serene morning on the island of Oahu, Hawaii. The sun had just begun to cast its warm golden rays over the tranquil waters of Pearl Harbor, a U.S. naval base near Honolulu. The air was filled with the familiar sounds of seagulls and waves gently lapping against the hulls of docked ships. Sailors were slowly starting their day, unaware of the catastrophic event that was about to unfold. Pearl Harbor was not just a naval base, it was a symbol of American strength and resilience. It was a bastion of security in a world that was becoming increasingly volatile. Across the Pacific, the political climate was heating up. Tensions were escalating between the United States and Japan. The global stage was set for conflict, yet on this Sunday morning in Hawaii, life was seemingly as peaceful as ever. The United States, in its pursuit of neutrality, had been walking a diplomatic tightrope. Japan, on the other hand, had been expanding its empire across East Asia, fueling a clash of interests. Yet, despite the growing animosity, the idea of a direct attack on American soil seemed far-fetched, almost unthinkable. But as we know, history has a way of shattering our illusions of security. The peaceful morning routine of Pearl Harbor's inhabitants was about to be disrupted in the most horrific way imaginable. Little did they know that they were on the precipice of an event that would shake the world and plunge the United States into the Second World War, and then without warning, the world changed forever. The calm of the morning was shattered, the skies filled with the roar of engines, the splintering of metal and the cries of the wounded. The tranquility of the Hawaiian morning was abruptly pierced by the ominous drone of aircraft engines. Japanese pilots, in two meticulously planned waves, had launched a surprise attack on the unsuspecting Pearl Harbor. The first wave of planes, a mix of torpedo bombers, dive bombers, horizontal bombers, and fighters, swooped in at around 7:45 on that fateful Sunday morning. Their primary targets, the 8 formidable American battleships docked in the harbor. The planes swooped low, releasing their deadly payloads. The harbor was transformed into a hellish landscape of smoke, fire, and chaos. The USS Oklahoma and USS West Virginia were the first to be hit, their hulls pierced by torpedoes. The Oklahoma capsized, while the West Virginia sank, its decks aflame. As the smoke from the first wave cleared, the second wave of attackers descended, more dive and horizontal bombers, their focus now on the remaining ships and airfields. The USS Arizona took a direct hit, its ammunition magazine ignited, causing a catastrophic explosion that ripped the ship apart. The mighty battleship sank in less than 9 minutes, taking with her over 1,000 souls. The attack was devastatingly efficient. In under 2 hours, 18 ships, including 5 battleships, were either sunk or heavily damaged. Almost 200 aircraft were destroyed, and close to 3,000 Americans were killed or wounded. The Japanese, meanwhile, lost 29 aircraft and 5 midget submarines, with 64 men killed and 1 captured. But the real damage was not just physical. It was the shock, the disbelief, the outrage. A quiet Sunday morning had been transformed into a scene of carnage and destruction, leaving a scar on the American psyche that would fuel the nation's entry into the Second World War. In less than 2 hours, a quiet harbor had turned into a watery grave for thousands. When the smoke cleared, Pearl Harbor was unrecognizable. The day of infamy had left a scar that would never truly heal. As the sun rose the next day over the smoldering ruins, rescue efforts were already underway. Sailors, soldiers, and civilians, some injured themselves, rushed to the aid of their comrades trapped in the wreckage. They worked tirelessly, often risking their own lives in the process. Their heroism in these harrowing hours is a testament to the human spirit's resilience in the face of adversity. The cost of the attack was staggering. More than 2,400 Americans lost their lives, and over 1,000 more were wounded. The U.S. Pacific Fleet, once a symbol of American strength and ingenuity, was left in tatters. 8 battleships, 3 cruisers, and 4 destroyers were either sunk or heavily damaged. Over 180 aircraft were destroyed. The shockwave of the attack reverberated across the United States. News of the assault stunned the American public, plunging the nation into a state of shock and disbelief. This was quickly replaced by a tide of anger and resolve. The attack on Pearl Harbor was not just an assault on the Pacific Fleet. It was an attack on American soil, on American values, on the American way of life. People from all walks of life rallied together, united by a common purpose. They were determined to not let this act of aggression go unanswered. The desire for retribution was palpable, fueling a war effort that would span across continents and oceans. In the aftermath of Pearl Harbor, the United States found itself irrevocably changed. The nation had lost its sense of security, but it had gained a sense of purpose. The Day of Infamy had forced the country out of its isolationist stance. The United States was no longer a spectator in World War II, it was a participant. The Day of Infamy had awoken a sleeping giant. The United States was ready to fight. Just a day after the Pearl Harbor attack, the nation's response was swift and unequivocal. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, in his iconic wheelchair, addressed a joint session of Congress with a speech that would echo throughout the decades. His words were as powerful as they were succinct. Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. It was a declaration, a statement of defiance, and a rallying cry for a nation that had been thrust into a world at war. The infamy speech, as it came to be known, was a turning point. It galvanized the nation, shifting public opinion dramatically. Before Pearl Harbor, many Americans were hesitant about joining the war. They were weary of conflict, still carrying the scars of the First World War. But the attack changed everything. It was a brutal awakening, a realization that neutrality was no longer an option. The speech led to a near-unanimous declaration of war on Japan. Only one Congresswoman, Jeannette Rankin, voted against it, cementing her place in history as a steadfast pacifist. The United States, once a spectator, had now entered the global stage as a major player in World War II. The immediate aftermath saw the United States military springing into action. The attack had decimated the Pacific Fleet, but America's industrial might was undeterred. Factories were retooled, production was ramped up, and a wave of enlistments flooded recruitment centers. The country was at war, and every citizen, every industry, every resource was directed towards victory. In the end, the Day of Infamy was more than just a surprise attack. It was a catalyst for change, a pivotal moment that transformed the United States from a nation at peace to a global superpower at war. The United States had entered the war, changing the course of history forever. Over 80 years have passed since the attack on Pearl Harbor. How has this event shaped our world? The attack on Pearl Harbor was more than just an isolated incident. It was the catalyst that thrust the United States into the crucible of World War II, marking a turning point not only in American history, but in the history of the world. Prior to the attack, America had maintained a policy of neutrality. However, the unprovoked assault by the Japanese forces awakened a sleeping giant, propelling the United States onto the international stage as a major military power. The attack was a wake-up call that led to a radical shift in U.S. foreign policy, from isolationism to internationalism. Moreover, the attack on Pearl Harbor had a profound influence on U.S. military policy. It catalyzed a massive military buildup, leading to the development of a permanent, peacetime military-industrial complex. It also triggered advances in military technology that would define warfare in the second half of the 20th century. But the impact of Pearl Harbor extends beyond policy and into the hearts and minds of the American people. The attack has been etched into the American consciousness as a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity. It has inspired countless stories, films, and songs that commemorate the heroism and sacrifice of those who were there that fateful day. The memory of Pearl Harbor continues to play a crucial role in shaping American identity. It's a reminder of the cost of freedom and the importance of vigilance in preserving peace. It's an enduring testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a testament that resonates with each new generation. As we look back on the events of that day, we are reminded of the words of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who described it as a date which will live in infamy. Indeed, the Day of Infamy is a stark reminder of the cost of war and the resilience of the human spirit. It's an event that forever altered the course of history, and its memory continues to shape our world today.